describe the vertical development through stages. Ideally, the stages which could be seen objectively.
Enough on this question. So I'm just going to kind of try to answer right now as I'm thinking about it. You see, I would make a distinction between responding or surrendering to the vertical impulse or the vertical direction, which I think is mainly between me and myself, is a subjective experience that maybe nobody can know from the outside. And so that would be one thing. And the other thing is what I call spiritual integration, which is how everything in who I am as a human being, and as a social human being, how that kind of comes together and joins the movement, the vertical movement. So I think it may be helpful to relate to these as two separate things. So if you ask me just about the vertical movement, I don't know if I can speak about stages. I can speak about what I see has changed in me. And I think the main thing that changed in me is a deepening of trust in that movement in myself, so that I don't need to see it, I don't need to feel it. After being on the path for 45 years or so, I already know that something is pulling me and something is also guiding me in that vertical direction, in a way that beyond my mind and beyond my imagination and even beyond my feeling, and so I feel I'm being led in a way that I can and am trusting, and that developed and that became stronger over the decades, and over many times falling out, falling back,
And do you see the highest level, like what would be the ultimate or the summit of this path for you or for a human being?
I don't think my imagination can go there. I don't think we have I don't think whatever I can imagine and whatever I can express in words is completely limited by where I'm at and what my understanding is at this point. So I wouldn't even, and that I think is another interesting thing, which is I always, for many years, I felt that I was on the way to get someplace. Maybe the next stage in my development, maybe the ultimate stage. And the longing was always to go there, beyond the horizon, beyond where I'm at. That kind of movement, in a way, separated me from where I was at the time. And now I feel that I'm still in that movement. I feel I am on the road somewhere, but I feel completely at home being on the road. So I'm not on the way to get home. I'm not waiting for anything to happen in the future where I would feel more at home. I feel completely at home with where I'm at, and where I'm at includes a movement and being pulled and longing to go further. But it doesn't separate me from where I'm at. And that,
how could you describe or distinct where are you at from other stages as a stage?
I don't think so.
I don't think.
Can you?
No,
Using what the map, like Ken Wilber's map or spiral dynamic?
No, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, would you say that is on the vertical axis, or yeah?
No, so like Ken Wilber, it depends which model will take, but the model where is like persona, maska, shadow, then one level, then ego and body, remember?
Yeah.
And the centaur. So it's I see it's a vertical, one of the vertical models.
Right. So for me, the vertical, what I refer to when I speak about the vertical axis is it's completely subjective. I don't think it can be objectified in that way.
But look, like if we'll take Gurdjieff for example, he said the human being are the machines, especially very mechanical at the beginning. So if I would not use any objective criteria, or I can, if it's only subjective, I can imagine about myself everything, even staying the machine, in the label of machine.
But you see, you can relate to subjectivity on the psychological level, which is kind of what I hear when you speak about subjectivity. And you can relate to subjectivity as the pure knowing, or the ultimate subject.
And could you distinct clearly, even but objectively, to this position?
Well, that would be a worthwhile effort to make, right?
Right.
Because I think that the ultimate or absolute subject also has a voice in us, and also guides us in some way. And then we have all the voices of the relative or the psychological or the conditioned subject with different voices, psychological needs and cultural conditioning and biological conditioning, etc., etc. So identifying the voice, it's not even a voice, it's some kind of a magnetic pull of the absolute subject, and distinguishing it from all the other voices of the subject. That would be a worthwhile project to take on.
Yeah, we are thinking about this question for a long time, and I mentioned Jeffrey Martin.
Yeah.
And my arguing about his theory is that he also taking just description, like human being, as a criteria of enlightenment. He took only how this subject described his experience, only that.
Yeah.
But he could be schizophrenic who make a very nice description.
Yeah.
That we are trying to think and to research the objective criteria, not only description. Like
so let me suggest another possibility,
Okay.
which I would like to develop, which is that, let's say that we interviewed 50 people who make all kinds of claims or describe their experience, and then we have groups of 20 people watch the interviews and write down whether they feel the description was authentic, whether they believed the person, whether they felt some kind of spiritual transmission or clarity coming from them, whether they felt uplifted when they listened to them, or did they feel like doubtful if what the person was saying was true. So it's not objective criterion, but it's not just believing what the person says. And I think that would add an element that would be more reliable than just relying on what the person said.
Yeah, I see it's more intermediate.
Yeah.
But it depends of which 20 people will you took.
Right.
If you will, it's somehow similar to, if you want special results, you as a researcher will choose 20 people who will tell you what you want.
Yes. Well, a good researcher, and that I think is what distinguishes a good researcher from a not so good researcher, wants to design the research in such a way that the results may contradict and refute their assumptions. So if I have certain assumptions of what results I would get, if I'm a good researcher, I would design the research in such a way that that there is a good chance, a 50% chance, that the results would contradict my assumptions. And that I would call a serious research, because that means that the researcher actually wants to find out if their assumptions are correct or not, rather than prove that their assumptions are correct.
But still, what I'm trying to pinpoint, that like enlightened person or some spiritual master is not just say special words describing his experience.
Yes.
Maybe some of them are like that, but some of them live, behave in a special way.
Yes.
So we can, someone can look on them and see not only the words,
That's right.
but behavior.
That's right.
and so on.
Yes. Yes.
And after that, make a kind of conclusion. Is this really a spiritual master or just someone who is saying spiritual words?
Yeah. So this is very similar to what I suggested, is to have a group of people who are like assessing. And of course you're right that it depends also on who is in that group. But if you choose people not only that you know will be critical and will not only confirm what you want, what you believe should be the outcome, then it's more interesting. Yeah, and I think ideally a good research, you choose as your partner another researcher who has the opposite assumptions to yours, and you design the research together, and then if you can come to some conclusions that you both agree on, then it's much more reliable.
Interesting. Do you have someone? Do you have someone with opposite assumption?
Yeah, For example, this is I'm thinking of specifically of my friend Urban Kordesh from Slovenia, who we're thinking of doing a research on the background experience of spiritual teachers, spiritual exemplars. And he asked me, he said to me, so what would make you happier if we found out that they all had the same background experience, or that each of them had a different background experience? And I said, I would be happier if we discovered that they all have the same background experience. And he said, I'm the opposite. I would be happier if we found out that each of them has a different background experience. So this is like a good partnership of researchers who come with very different expectations and, let's say, intuitive inclinations. And then whatever we find together, if we can find something that we both agree on, that I think would be more has more significance, scientific significance.
Уточни, пожалуйста, что он подразумевает под термином интуиция?
He wants to know what is your definition, or how do you understand intuition? You probably used this word, да? Потому что он использовал слово.
Да, не скажу.
Yeah, so because you used.
The way that I used it just now is, I think it's an emotional preference
Эмоциональные предпочтения,
that each of us has. And
которые
it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily indicate that it's true.
Окей. Просто мы различаем три категории: инстинкт, интеллект, интуиция. И для нас интуиция нечто превышающее интеллект. Да? А вот то, что он описывает, опирающееся на эмоцию, это для нас инстинкт.
So we distinct three categories: instinct, intellect, and intuition.
Okay.
So for us, intuition is something which farther intellect, farther than mind. Like you use whole your mind plus something.
Right.
And if you are on the emotional preferences, for us is more like an instinct.
I see. So there is something, I think if I understand what you're talking about, I think there is a certain kind of knowing that unifies all different aspects of our psyche and being. So it's not only coming from our mind, it's not only from our body, not only from our feelings, but somehow everything in us kind of agrees that about that
Knowledge, you mean?
knowledge. Yes. So would that be what you call intuition?
Yes.
Okay. So would you agree that that is not necessarily objectively true? That one can feel completely unified in terms of what they know or what decision they need to make, which makes it true for that person at that time, but it doesn't mean that it's universally true. Is that also your answer?
Он так думает,
Он так вот
себя
переживает.
позиционирует, переживает эмоционально, то есть высокий станет, и все.
So he is trying to distinguish on that more deeply. What does it mean that human is completely unified, like you said? Is it mean that his emotional feelings, like just a feeling, or something else?
When I think of times when I have this kind of knowing, there isn't any doubt, because
Нет сомнений, как бы в этот момент времени, когда вот я в таком состоянии. Вот у этого человека, no doubt, нет сомнений.
Да, он переживать это может, но в этот момент он не полностью интегрирован.
He said from his point of view, the no doubt doesn't mean that he is fully integrated.
Это его так называемая сознательная часть.
It's just his cognitive side.
А бессознательная часть может все что угодно вытворять в это время.
He's unconscious, so cognitively he can think that he has no doubt, that he is pretty sure that he is unified. But unconsciously he could behave in opposition to that, for example.
That's right. That's right.
Согласен он.
Yeah. Yeah.
Тогда позвольте мне пару слов.
Да. So he wants to say a couple of words.
Yes.
То есть я наблюдал замечательный диалог, и мне кажется, по моим субъективным ощущениям, что в какой-то момент я становился третьим в вашей диалоге, потому что у меня возникало устойчивое переживание, что я понимаю, что вы говорите. Ну, то есть знаю я все, там, может быть, 2-3 десятка слов, но вот возникало ощущение, что я понимаю, схватываю суть того, о чем вы говорите.
So like he knows in English not even 100, just 20-30 words. But he has a feeling that he really understands that core and depths of the idea of our conversation, of our dialogue.
То есть, может быть, это как раз тот феномен, о котором Амир упоминал вчера. Он, ну, скажем, пунктиром проявлялся, но вот то, что диалог шел на троих, для меня очень-очень как бы, ну, в переживаниях очевидно. Спасибо.
Maybe this is the phenomena you told us yesterday. Thank you very much for that.
If you can tell him that my experience with him is that I have that experience with him without even having the same language.
У него тоже опыт похожий с тобой, даже без того же самого языка.
Thank you.
So it's a quality of attention and human interaction that doesn't even need a language.
То есть это качество внимания и взаимодействия, которому даже не нужен язык.
Ну вот на нашем языке, да, мы это называем интуицией.
On our language we call it intuition.
Okay.
This quality.
Okay.
Ваше слово завершающее.
Yeah, I'm still. The subject is very interesting to me because this is my couple of words.
Yes.
So the subject is very interesting. Also, we have a student-master relationship. So I was trying to look on that, and from my point of view, and we have several theories about that too. I'm not sure that I fully understand an idea of your research, but I hope I will read the book and will.
That's my previous research. My current PhD research is on a completely different subject, and I haven't spoken about it yet. But it's about the question of my research, of my PhD research, is what is the difference in the experience between people who have peak experiences and people who remain on the spiritual high plateau and don't go back and forth. So I looked for people who are on the spiritual high plateau, and I interviewed them. And also a lot of them could report about the difference between the time in their life when they had peak experiences and now when they are on the spiritual high plateau. And I interviewed 32 such people. I call them spiritual exemplars from different traditions, shamanic and Abrahamic and Eastern and New Age. And I'm writing a few papers on this subject. And specifically what I'm writing now, which is my second paper, is about what is constant and unchanging in the experience of people who are on the spiritual high plateau. which is different from the fluctuation that people who have spiritual experiences talk about.
But this is a stage.
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that.
Which I was asking you.
Yeah, you could say that.
Because we have a model of one of the model of vertical development, and we have idea that there could be dominant position in this model, and could be like peak experience, so someone could temporarily get the place and then fall down.
So I asked the people that I interviewed about what characterizes that which is constant and unchanging. And the answers that were given, some of them spoke about a knowing, so awareness or knowing. Some about emotional quality, love, bliss, constant sense of excitement or vibration. Some about embodied qualities. So they know it in their body or energetically, and some about a relational quality, which means that they're aware of, for example, no separation between them and the environment, or they feel connected with everything in the. So these are the four qualities that now I'm writing about and bringing specific examples of how people describe each of these four qualities. And then there's a variation in, some people say that it's there all the time, including in deep sleep. And some people say that it's varying degrees of that. It's there all the time, but it's varying degrees. Some people say that they need to practice in order for it to be present all the time. Some people say that it's more when they teach and less when they don't teach. So there are also variations on different qualities of that.
Somehow similar to what Jeffrey Martin, the point.
Yes, there is a similarity. You know, the spiritual high plateau is a term that Abraham Maslow coined.
At Maslow.
Yeah, and Maslow described that he was for about a year and a half before he passed away. So he had heart failure, a heart attack, and then he lived for another year and a half, and he had a second heart attack that killed him. But during that year and a half, he said that he was on a spiritual high plateau. And I was so inspired when I read that from his diaries and letters. Yeah.
Как я понимаю, я сказал, ты сказал, остаются 2 минуты, и у него завершающее слово.
Can you make your conclusion or last words of our conversation?
Well, I feel that we just started.
Мы просто только начали.
To touch on subjects, and also I have to tell you, I am much. If you want to kind of get the most or the best out of me, it has to be dialogue. I'm not very good. I don't think I'm a good interviewee. I think I'm much better when there is an exploration with other people going on.
В общем, должен быть диалог, если вы хотите от меня большего, а не интервью.
Может быть, мы это наладим через интернет? Продолжим.
We can try to continue through internet.
Yeah. We can definitely do that. That would be very nice.